Hello and welcome to Monarchism Unfiltered. I'm one of your hosts, McCosk.
This is me,
Um,
Bronze.
I am, and I speak over people.
As he is known to do. Well, today, listener, we have quite the treat. We're going to talk about that most rare type of conspiracy theories, Jesuit conspiracy theories.
I mean, to be fair, they aren't that rare. I mean, they do stand at the center of almost all anti-Catholic conspiracy theories.
Like they're really common. Like they're everywhere.
Jesuits?
No, anti-Jesuit conspiracy theories.
So I
Yes,
suppose
it's
also.
illustration, as it were.
Yeah,
Omni.
I mean, as every schoolboy, I mean, has heard fables of the Black Pope and his exploits.
Yeah, I mean, the. I think we should begin with the Black Pope and that whole wing of conspiratorial thinking. So sorry, for those who don't know, the quote unquote Black Pope is the like head of
Superior General.
superior general of the Jesuits, and the conspiracy theory goes that, and so this is usually for those conspiracy theory people who are anti-Jesuit, pro-Catholic. Um, so they will contend that the Pope is like contained or like is forced to do homage to the Black Pope, who then it stands as like a power behind the throne, sort of thing.
And the listener, this is still pretty tame. The level of insanity these conspiracy theories can goes beyond anything really.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get to the Globe and Avro Manhattan and all the rest of it soon enough. But yeah, it's interesting that so many conspiracy targets, specifically the Jesuits, because you never hear of like a Franciscan plot. That would be something, but yeah, I think you know it because like the Jesuits were once upon a time really powerful, and also because like the whole anti-Jesuit thing, it started in Protestant countries where Jesuits used deception. Um, that yeah. By the way, dear viewer or listener, this podcast is a Jesuitical plot. I just want to disclaimer.
Yeah,
You know,
just sort of off the bat,
we are a Jesuitical plot,
we're on the
and
payroll of
yeah, the Black Pope, and we've all sworn secret oaths.
yeah.
Oh fuck! I shouldn't have said.
uh,
No, this is completely
I
wholesome
laugh.
broadcasting.
I laugh because I'm gonna track him down later and kill him. Cut out his tongue for revealing the secrets. But
Yeah, so,
yes,
dear viewer, I hope you appreciate. This is the final ever episode of Monarchism Unfiltered. For my days in
The
the light.
final episode with traitors on it, that's for sure.
exactly. Um, but yeah, obviously financial disclosure, full financial disclosure. We are on the payroll of the Society of Jesus, um, and we receive direct orders from the Black Pope. Now, all that being said, as Bronze was saying, the origin basically of most of these plots is essentially from Protestant countries where Jesuits would use deception to minister to um, crypto Catholics, secret Catholics,
Yeah, well,
and
persecuted Catholics, general.
yeah, persecute. I say secret just in the sense that like they were hidden, so on and so forth. They like were continued to be loyal, but sort of hid. So this is the case in large parts of the north of England, um, and like
Norway, there's a lot of them.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and I think it reached heights when what was it? Foxes and Firebrands was this book published in 17th century England that started this rumor that Jesuits would swear a secret oath. And let me fetch this secret oath so that I can read it to you, so that you can get sort of an idea of what claims were being leveled against God's Marines. Yeah, it was in Robert Ware in his book Foxes and Firebrands says that all Jesuits swore the oath. I do further promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war secretly and openly against all heretics, Protestants, and Masons, as I am directed to do, to extirpate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, nor condition, and that I will hang, burn, waste, boil, flail, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the wall in order to annihilate their execrable race. That when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisonous cup, the strangulation cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do by any agents of the Pope or Superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Father of the Society of Jesus, in confirmation of which I hereby dictate my life, soul, and all corporal powers, and with the dagger which I now receive, I will subscribe my name, written in blood, in testimony thereof. And should I prove false or weak in my determination, may my brethren and fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope get off my hands and feet and throw me and my throat from ear to ear, my belly be opened and sulphur burned therein, with all the punishment that can be inflicted upon me on earth, and my soul shall be tortured by demons in eternal hell forever.
Amen.
Amen.
That is a interesting
A whole lot of claims going on in this not that long oath. Well, I mean, for an oath, it's
for
reasonably
an
long.
oath. It's massive.
It's a massive oath, yeah.
Like
As a book, it's short, but as an oath, yeah. And if you had to read that by heart, then that's some dedication to Popish plottery.
imagine being you swear in 4 new brothers, you like 4 new initiates or whatever. Like it's gonna take. I mean, that's way too much time, especially with all the other sort of things that they would do. Yeah, I mean that's a hot take, is what.
Because remember that like already there are the non-secret boy, I will boil the heretics alive oaths as well. So,
Yeah, so yeah, so there's those oaths, and it's just it's just a bit. What do you call it? Like insane. I think is the word.
Yeah, I think I mean, certainly I know one would accuse Robert Ware of lacking imagination.
Yeah. Not that that's necessarily a good thing, but
I mean, one can have too much imagination.
yeah, I would definitely agree with that. But yeah, it seems to me that the the there is this kind of interesting Protestant substrate um, to these kinds of theories, because it sort of emerges. At least I don't know how much it was in like Germany and Scandinavia, but certainly with the Jesuit plots or like the Jesuit conspiracy theories had a large sort of political angle in the UK. Or well, not in the UK, in England, Kingdom of England and Ireland, whatever it was called.
Three Kingdoms.
Yeah, in the 3 kingdoms that were not yet united, because basically all of the with the House of Stuart obviously being pseudo-Catholics didn't like all these sort of suggestions. Or well, at least Charles II, so on and so forth, didn't like this Popish plot stuff.
Yeah, I
But
mean it's interesting to know that Foxes and Firebrands, in which the Oath was featured, and literature like it. And Foxes and Firebrands was written in 1689. There was a huge sort of resurgence in anti-Jesuit material after the Glorious Revolution.
yeah, and that was I believe there were like connections between that and the government sort of funding it, or that at least it was.
Yeah, well, I mean the new the new monarchy was like very Protestant.
Yeah, sort of.
In a way that the Stuarts hadn't really been. I mean his direct predecessor James II was Catholic. And
Yeah, and I mean, but even prior to that, someone like um,
yeah,
James the First, sorry, he was he was very much, he wanted to be like fair-handed in religion.
yeah. Well,
That
he
sort of
tried
came
to
to a
keep it
head.
all together because there was a lot of divide going on.
Yeah,
So
but
he
he
was
was.
mainly trying to, like, let's not all sort of go at it all at once, because then it's going to get messy.
Yeah, I mean, he was still anti-Jesuit in large part because of he got criticized by the Jesuits. They sort of called him an idiot, and criticized his book on divine right of kings, which is a sort of thing into itself. But certainly there was one of the interesting elements. Basically, is that the Jesuits sort of become this symbol um, in these popish plots of um, like the Illuminati would be the best sort of comparison term. That it's like this secret order of people who are interested in controlling the world and like ruling over all people, even though in reality, and actually in both cases, both the Illuminati and the Jesuits were, and still are, were well, Illuminati don't exist, but um, were like essentially proto-liberals, or like generally generally pro freedom, quote unquote. So there's this interesting element, at least in English conspiracy theories about the Jesuits, that they're portrayed as a sort of symbol of European continental totalitarianism, despotism, French tyranny. That's the sort of general line.
Yeah, sort of, like all the valleys opposite to beef and liberty, as it were.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yes,
it.
because especially in the Napoleon, like especially later, but even through the Georgian era, like eating beef was seen as this very British thing, and there's the Royal Beefsteak Society, which still exists today, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I think the sort of I think the interesting element of it is then how it contrasts in many ways with what I know of European concepts of like of the Jesuits, and sort of Jesuit influence, because obviously Voltaire himself, Voltaire, arch atheist that he was, um, he was he like the only sort of people that he praised in the Catholic Church were like nuns and Jesuits, I believe, and the his sort of former Jesuit teachers.
Well, that makes sense, seeing as I mean, the Jesuits tried to hide this from you, but his real name was actually Francois Marie Arouet, and he was actually a Popish actor too, so he was part of the Popish plot.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so there's this interesting contrast, I think, where in and McCoskey, you can probably talk quite a bit about this, but for the Europeans, the Jesuits were this sort of like fifth column against against imperial, like against colonialism, the colonial empires, against
Yeah,
the monarchy, so forth. Especially the Spanish and the Spanish.
Portuguese ones. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, to understand the anti-Jesuitic thought in the Iberian Peninsula, we can break it down into two periods, which I'm creatively naming the early and the late period, because why not? The early period, which went from the beginning of like 15th century to 16th century, give or take, the general belief was that they were basically high-level conspirators. Depending on who you ask, they were considered this because they opposed the slave trade. They were considered to be high-level conspirators because they fought for native rights, and more importantly, to the actual heads of state and government, the Jesuits in what is now Uruguay. Yeah, Uruguay and the part of and basically the parts of Argentina and Brazil that are near Uruguay in the border were all once part of a thing called the Jesuit Reductions, which were, for the lack of a better term, virtually autonomous states run by the Jesuits in the South, where they basically kept natives and tried to stop them from being victims of slavery. Understandably, to a certain degree, this was very problematic for a lot of for the colonial powers. In the Portuguese case, we dealt with it by not dealing with it and leaving that to the Spaniards, which they dealt with by literally going to war with them. There's sadly very little information on these conflicts in English, but if you're willing to brave the Spanish speaking internet, you can find some neat details. But let's not go into too much details about the reductions because that is an episode in of itself. In the later period, the Jesuits, ironically enough, started being victimized by liberals themselves. Many saw them as holdovers of the previous autocratic and reactionary era that many sought to replace. Enlightenment and absolutism in both Portugal and Spain carried degrees of Jesuitic persecution. In both cases, either because they stood at the margin of royal power, or later still because they stood at the margin of liberalism and secular learning, particularly in Portugal. So the anti-Christian, well, the Christian but anti-Jesuitic line of thought was always that they were kind of out of the control of government and were always too organized and powerful in important institutions such as either education or territorial administration. That being said, let me see if I can remember it well. There used to be a very Michael Jones-esque conspiracy in the Jesuit held schools, and I shouldn't really use past tense because this is still a thing because the Jesuits have been allowed back into Portugal and I think they hold some schools and seminars and what have you. They're not a university though. In that, well, boys who go to Jesuitic schools become gay. The actual reason as to why this is a thing runs from corrupt baptism or sacramental wine. Baptism wine, Jesus Christ. Like, we also have our fair share of Jesuits are literally Satan in robes. Like the most outlandish I can think the most outlandish I can think is that the two guys who shot the king in 1910 were secret Jesuit members, with the whole thing being supposedly a revenge of the Jesuits. Like that's peak outlandish that I can remember.
I mean, that is the longest con of long cons.
Weren't they legalized by that point? Realized.
Well, yes. That's kind of why I say this is like that. In the fringe theories of why the two fuckos did it, this is amongst the fringest. Like, it doesn't even make
Pretty bad,
sense.
I think.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense because the dynasty that overthrew them had already been exiled. So it's again like the realm of conspiracy theories, at least in the Portuguese sphere, they either exist in a historical context regarding the aforementioned early period, or as extremely marginal things in more contemporary times.
Yeah, because the Jesuits, like, they had a large, fall from grace, when they lost, as they were opposed by both the liberal and the reactionary.
So I mean, having
And
sort of discussed the background, I think we should start discussing the revival
yeah,
of
because they had a revival, I'd say. Well, there was like some anti-Jesuit stuff in the 19th century, thinking about for example, the Constitution of Norway, which banned Jews, Jesuits, and Quakers from entering the country. But like, really, I think that the 20th century represents the real revival in Jesuit conspiracy theories, and in conspiracy theories in general. Because I think, and the reason I think that conspiracy theories got so big in the 20th and continue to be quite big in the 21st century is because, there was like the traditional order of Europe had shattered in World War One, and so, there wasn't really sort of this sense of like that it was all gonna be all right.
so yeah, I mean, and
Yeah, and because I think on a level, conspiracy theories are in a sense comforting. Because I think you can find some sort of a strange sense of morbid comfort in the fact that, the Black Pope, he's out there controlling the world, and so even if you don't like the way he's doing it or you don't like him, someone is, and that's sort of like a solace from the harsh fact that no one is in control. No, and like the sum of humanity does not have a clue as to what it's doing, and so we're all just like meandering in the dark. But so there's this, like, the Illuminati or the Black Pope or the Jesuits. They're out there. They're controlling the stuff. And if we can dethrone them, we can replace them with, someone good that runs everything, and then it'll be fine.
It's a weird coping mechanism, but it's without a doubt a coping mechanism.
so who there was the guy that you encountered. Was it AA? What was his name? The Reddit
Okay, there's
veritable
several
cornucopia.
guys.
So there's the veritable cornucopia that we recently discovered. Rome rules. That's
Rome
the
rules, yeah. And the
so
language of the Jesuit, of anti-Jesuit conspiracies has shifted. Because no longer there's talk about, as there was before, of Jesuitical plots and secret oaths. Now they have entered the realm of the bizarre. You know, and so there's several key figures that I've, because I've researched, I've trawled through the horrid sluices of the anti-Jesuit web, and it's deep. It's a deep sewer. It's a cesspit of knowledge. And there's several guys. The first is Avro Manhattan, and I don't know where to start, but I'd suggest just looking him up, because he's this Italian baron and intellectual guy. He's friends with a lot of people like Picasso, and he wrote like a lot of books in which he blamed the Jesuits for everything, all of it. I mean, his books go as far as to say the Catholic Church and against the 20th century, the Vatican in Asia, Vatican imperialism in the 20th century, the dollar and the Vatican, Catholic power today, Catholic terror today, and his most famous book, The Vatican Moscow Washington Alliance.
Vatican Moscow Washington Alliance. I mean that's that. I believe Chick Tracks has a similar line. Because in it, Chick Tracts alleges that the Catholic Church created communism.
Yeah. I mean, there is a sense that both the United States and the Soviet Union were in fact Popish plots. And so if you dive into this, you'll see a lot of materials on how Soviet collectivized agriculture was modeled on the Jesuit Reductions and stuff.
I mean, that there were some superficial similarities, yeah, but modeled? No.
Yeah, so and then it, and there's one more figure, and that is G. Gordon Liddy. And he's not as outspoken or as bizarre as Avro Manhattan and the rest like him, but he's important because he attended the traditionally Jesuit Fordham University, and he wrote later of his time there that it was from Fordham University that the Jesuits controlled the world. And so recently, a lot of the stuff that you will see if you trawl the aforementioned cesspit of knowledge is related to the traditionally Jesuit universities in America. From among them being, as mentioned, Fordham University and Georgetown University. And so anyone who has attended either of these universities is apparently part of the Popish plot. And for a time, even though he's most famous for his time at the Wharton School of Finance, the current president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, attended Fordham University.
So Trump is a Jesuit psyop. Confirmed.
Yes, I mean this is sort of the springboard. But here it gets weird. Because, then comes the other half of the appeal of the conspiracy theory. The first is that, the search of comfort that, someone out there knows what's going on. The second is that you know what's going on. The sort of smug sense of superiority that comes with that the knowledge of the fact that 99% of the world's population is ignorant of what the world truly is. But you, with nothing more than a computer and the ability to trawl Wikipedia to see who has attended a private research university in the northeastern US, can figure out and plot the true natures of hidden power. And so from this sort of Archimedean point of writers such as Avro Manhattan and Gordon P. Liddy, the conspiracy crowd has gone wild, right? Tearing down anything related to the historical church, to the Jesuits, and any inference they've made to other things. For example, a lot of stuff, that says the globe is in fact a popish Jesuitical plot. Or that the Big Bang, for example, was formulated by a Catholic priest and so is therefore also part of the propaganda.
Is there anything on this green earth that isn't a Jesuitical plot, then?
No comment.
Oh, that's a yikes from me, then. Okay, like, where the people, like, okay, what is the logistics of the globe being a papish plot? Like, come on, try to relay that one to me.
So there's two layers to the organization. There are the insiders and the zealots. The insiders would include people like the Pope, the Black Pope, people who are Jesuits or affiliated with other Catholic organizations like the Knights of Malta, or the defunct but alive in the world of conspiracy theories, Knights of the Templar Knights. So and then the rest is, your average Sunday Catholic. Now he is a pawn, a zealot to be used by the Jesuitical insiders. And through their vast hordes and their undisclosed financial networks that control all of the earth, as indeed the banking system itself is Jesuitical, they control.
So essentially, it's a sort of order of initiated and sort of mere puppets, as it were.
Well,
Yeah.
cannon fodder at this point.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of fairly basic stuff.
I mean, eventually, because as they just keep drawing more and more inferences and construct bizarre and bizarre networks, they become nearer and nearer to the platonic form of a conspiracy theory, and then it just becomes quite generic.
Yeah, I mean the Avro Manhattan, I think, is probably the most interesting of all of these modern figures, as it were. Just because of like how bizarre, like just his personal life seems compared to Liddy and his they run the world from this smoky coffee room or whatever it is. Because it's like what
Yeah,
was
I mean, Avro really emphasizes the indirect control, that everyone is a Jesuit. That the president's a Jesuit, that the general secretaries of the Soviet Union kissed the Black Pope's ring, and so forth.
so and okay so what's even more interesting about Avro Manhattan is so he was born Teofilio Lucifaro Gardini, and then he changed his name to Avro Manhattan. And so this is what it says on his tombstone: to the beloved memory of Baron Avro Manhattan, KT, PhD, Knight Commander of the Crown of Savoy, Grand Cross of the Order of Mercedes, Knight Commander of Justice, Malta, Commander Commander Grand Cross of Bethlehem, writer and historian, poet and artist, departed this life November 27th, 1990. And then it's his wife. So it seems to me utterly bizarre that a man who was the knight commander was a knight commander of the Crown of Savoy, and like all of these titles, as far as we can tell, or as far as I can tell, are like real. Like he is actually a baron. That someone like this, who he's been to the LSE, he's been to the Sorbonne, can also produce like almost shovelware level conspiracy theories.
I mean, this man was top chums with the likes of Picasso and H.G. Wells and George Bernard Shaw and Mary Stopes. So it's he moved in sort of quite interesting circles, and yet he sort of shoveled this trite, recycled 17th century stuff, but he gave it a new lick of paint.
I mean, he's actually listed as one of the sources for chick tracks, which is I like ironic. Yeah, I mean it's quite bizarre. I think that yeah, I mean it's just I almost don't know how to describe some of this stuff because it's just so like outlandishly bizarre. I mean, it's on the level of like blood libel or something like that.
And this is like as highbrow and refined as it gets. Because like go to any message board, and these types of people is like exclusively move through Reddit and YouTube, mostly YouTube, where they appear to communicate exclusively in the form of 3-hour-long, very bad documentaries.
Yeah,
making claims such as that that Epstein was in fact murdered by the papacy, or that Mugabe was a popish plot. As said, many ties to flat eartherism, and
I mean,
and like there's long lists of companies who have board members who have attended a traditionally Jesuit university. And so those are all on like a suspect list.
I do love the like insane person logic of you spent 3 years at a university, ergo you like know all of the lecturers and are on their payroll. You know, notwithstanding the fact that you can go through your entire time at university and never really interact with a professor or even lecturers. But the it just seems to me kind of utterly bizarre. This because
And the people that they put on the list, they're not like professors at Fordham. They're just guy who got bachelor degree in economics at Fordham. Now that means he's like, he's got the direct line to the Black Pope.
yeah. Well,
Which
the Black Pope has the direct line to him.
yeah, exactly. I mean, he reports to the Black Pope, or
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the Black Pope has outsourced that duty because I mean, you think all the Fordham alumni add up after a while.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, it's more likely that there's the local branch agent that they have to report to, and then he sort of filters through whatever is necessary. And then,
Exactly. I mean, he's probably got like a system of secretaries and like tubes. There's vacuum tubes they had in like banks where you put the money in like a thing and it goes. I missed them. That's.
when did you ever interact with those?
I've been to like older banks that have the vacuum like, pneumatic tube.
Okay, I mean that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I think there is. You were right earlier as well, where with the strange thing with this is that these kinds of Jesuit conspiracy theories, where like Pope reports to Black Pope sort of thing. It is kind of bizarre that these things choose the Jesuits and not say, I don't know, the Dominicans or like or yeah, as you said, the Franciscans. Like imagine a sort of Franciscan centric conspiracy theory, St. Francis of Assisi has like a 10,000 year long plan or something. Like there's no sort of, and I mean that would I think, considering like Name of the Rose, that would be in many ways I think more interesting. But
I mean,
Then they're clearly not bound by reason, so like anything goes.
yeah, it would be like, what's the most interesting? It seems to me the most interesting thing would be St. Francis of Assisi. Is it Third Prophecy of Fatima? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like Third Prophecy. That's like an illusion. The real thing is sort of that Joachim of Fiore, famous, sorry, Blessed Joachim of Fiore, famous medieval prophet who theorized a coming world, like contemplative age, that he sort of actually did a series of predictions that have to come true. And so the Franciscans manipulate the Catholic Church to realize these prophecies so as to bring about communism and the end of the world.
Yeah,
That
I mean, the Brown Pope, because why not? He's got all the prophecies. He's got all the Fatima prophecies up to 7 on microfiche in the Vatican libraries. Like this.
Never forget, the Fraticelli were merely a wing of the Franciscan conspiracy theory that went out of control and became a rogue element. I hold that as abject
It was
proof
a whole
that
big operation, Mikosk. How many times have we discussed this? The Fraticelli went out of control on purpose.
okay.
the Fraticelli were merely an additional side plot so as to strengthen the power of the Pope, and yeah, I mean clearly, I mean the same is true even of Martin Luther, because obviously Martin Luther was an Occamist, so he as well was therefore a Franciscan. So the clearly what
My God, it just hit me. It just hit me. I figured out the long con here and now. I figured out the long con. The Franciscans are directly responsible for global warming because they were directly responsible in the medieval age for increase in agricultural efficiency and production and wood exploitation.
was De las Casas a Franciscan?
I think.
Because if he was, then obviously, clearly, the slave trade was also a Franciscan op.
No, no, I think the Las Casas was Dominican
I mean,
because he's got
it's
his.
all the same.
What are the Dominicans, but the ultimate Franciscan psyop? Like, let's be real here.
I mean, what I especially appreciate about all the various Franciscan and Jesuitical Popish plots is that while they have pulled the wool over the eyes of the entire world, any man with access to Wikipedia can completely uncover their secret network. And I think that was like a really nice touch.
Well, that's what makes it perfect, because it's so in front of your own eyes that it's just you instantly know, and because you instantly know, it's then less sexy, and therefore it's it's not like going on Wikipedia about flat Earth and being told you're wrong. It's like, whoa, there's all this stuff here, and they're not even hiding it, but it's slightly out of the way. Therefore, it must be true. If it was deeper, it's just crazed ravings.
Yeah, it's the perfect level of depth. But at the same time, if you take that Wikipedia content and you regurgitate it in like an endless psychotic network of 3-hour shite documentaries, then it's perfect, right? Because
Exactly.
exactly, right? Like that's the deep knowledge, right? Like you've got
That's how you separate the insiders from the zealots.
exactly. I mean, look, there's 3 layers of knowledge. Everyone knows this. The first, the shallow tier, is the first 3 results of a Google search. The second tier is Wikipedia, and the third tier is YouTube documentaries. At that point, you've hit the depths of knowledge, right? Like you're like in the 41st millennium, scouring the archives of terror.
You
Well,
will know.
I mean, YouTube is run by, is it Susan Wojcicki? So she's Polish, and as we all know, the nation of Poland is a Jesuit psyop.
Checks out. Checks out.
Because the Jesuit order were the people who preserved Polish nationality, or helped coordinate
Yeah,
a
what's
significant
interesting
portion
about
of the nationalist organization in the country. So clearly, the fact that Susan Wojciechowski, who is a Pole,
I,
runs
and-
YouTube, they've sort of placed it in front of our own eyes.
yeah, but I mean, it makes sense because they need to, they use this to, to pick out those of us who fall from our ever-ending quest for truth, but have found the hidden layer they pick to become insiders.
Clearly. I mean,
I mean, it's
yeah,
important to remember that another Polish Jesuit, well, another Pole with Jesuitical aspirations was Felix Dzerzhinsky, and that means I don't know any members of the original Soviet government that went to Fordham, but I think that's enough of a link to say that the Soviet Union is a Popish plot, as described in the Vatican Moscow Washington alliance.
I mean, it's conclusive.
Who can doubt such iron tight links?
Do you know who Sergei Nechayev was? He was a
Not off my head.
he was a Russian nihilist revolutionary who created what is known as barracks communism, which Marx criticized. But interestingly, he wanted the sort of political organizations to be modeled off of the Jesuits, and um, Lenin supposedly consistently praised him and loved his work and sort of cited it as a like continuing influence upon him throughout his life. So I think further confirming this point that the Soviet Union was a Jesuit psyop is the fact that you have
Apparently, so
open
like it's
praise.
not
Mhm.
Nechayev, the character Pyotr Kovensky in Fyodorowski's novel Demons is based on Nechayev, so that gives me like an idea of the man.
Why'd you say that?
Because he's the direct inspiration. Because
Or
like he's
describe the character, sorry.
well, I mean, he's like your sort of nihilistic, revolutionary, sort of shady type.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, you can go look up his writings, but like he said, it's interesting how religious he is in like his language because he basically says the revolutionary must like give themselves up for the revolution. It's like hand themselves over to the revolution. It's like all this sort of traditional Christian religious language, which is the interesting. I think there would be um, it would be interesting to see the connections between Russian nihilism and um, like Orthodox spirituality. That being said, the more important point is clearly, I think this then confirms Dostoevsky's take about arch ultramontanism. Or was it Dostoevsky?
it was.
Yeah, because clearly what that then proves is that communism was nothing other than the Jesuit attempt to create arch ultramontanism.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because obviously we know that the Jesuits were the biggest supporters of ultramontanism because they wanted like complete independence of the Pope from like you know or Spain or whoever else.
Well, we cracked the code, people. Now we just have to extend this podcast for 3 hours, and we will be in with the big leagues.
Yeah. So yeah, but also we have to like make some like incredibly bad video like CGI graphics to go on top of this. Let's feature like a knife that says Jesuit on it, stabbing into like the heart of an animated America, and then we'll be good to go.
Animated world, I think, really.
Yeah, I mean, but like,
With America at the center of the world.
yeah,
Okay.
because like all like it is the duty of every good and proud patriotic American to, that's a theme you see in a lot of the of the like conspiracy theorists is because they range from like very Protestant to very atheist, but they're all like in like very sort of Americanist. They're like, good, proud Christian or non or like faithless, depending on who you ask. Americans stand against Jesuitical plots. That's why I, as a patriot, believe in 4th of July, guns, and the flat Earth.
Reject the Jesuits and their so-called truths. Yeah, I mean that all makes sense. I think all this sort of being said, there is an interesting world of conspiracy theories out there that are much more interesting, I think, simply than flat Earth, whatever.
I mean, because like the flat Earth is not that interesting because they're just like, it's just an admission that you don't know anything, and that's not
Yeah.
very interesting, right? That you don't know like the two sticks, the Aristoteles experiment and all that. Like you just don't know anything. Don't add a flat earther community. But you're dumb. Like you like not to like harp on it, but like if you think the earth is flat, like come on, get a grip. Maths, big time. Except maths. Now, where the flat earthers get interesting is in their rejection of maths as like a demonic construct.
I mean, they have to reject maths because otherwise the whole other thing falls down.
Yeah, I mean, really, like if you acknowledge the existence of mathematics, you can't be in good in good faith a flat earther. And so you have to sort of embrace this anti-Gnosticism of like ideas don't exist, only natural sciences do, which is like all the parts of physics you don't need to do numbers to understand. Which is none of it. None of it. Yeah.
So just the Bible, basically.
Yeah. Either the Bible or you think the Bible is part of a Jesuitical plot as well. It depends. There's a spectrum. But yeah, I mean, this was like a light-hearted thing of just like ranting about strange people on the internet, and there's no end to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting world of.
Yeah, because I think it like shows like the human need to like feel knowledgeable, to like feel like you know what's going on, or at least that someone does,
Without being really informed.
Yeah, but I don't think one can like ever be like informed. Like I don't think that's like a thing you can reach.
But I mean, I think there's a difference between, say, a professor of physics and someone who's into flat Earth conspiracy theories.
Yeah, but like I think the difference is that hopefully the physics professors won't say, "Oh yeah, I know how it all works. It's fine." He'll probably say, "This is what we know, and we're always working to like deepen our knowledge, but you got to like take it slow. You got to like this is what is knowable. This is what might be knowable. That sort of thing."
Yeah.
Right. Because like there's like there's a like if you imagine that there's two fish, and one fish asks the other, "How's the water?" And then the second fish replies, "What's water?" And I think we're always the second fish, and that if you like the flat earthers thinks that like you can be like the first fish and be like, yeah, I know all about water, I understand the paradigms of the existence of man, then I think you're deluding yourself. And in saying that, I have now exclaimed what I think the water is. So
what do you know? I think
exactly.
That's an interesting note to leave on. But yeah, I think it's. Check out, if you're interested in any more of this, check out Reddit Rome Rules. Interesting subreddit.
Yeah, and if you're interested in keeping your sanity and not spending 3 days researching every Manhattan and like the Fordham University lists, then don't. Go read a book by Dostoevsky or something nice like Growth of the Soil by Humpson. That's that's some literary recommendations. Go do that. Don't go to Rome Rules. I've been there. It's not good.
Rome is
I would
deep.
have to deny that they're pretty epic.
Yeah, okay, they are in a sense Chad, but no more than
but
an hour a day. That's the rule.
yeah, um, yeah. Basically, I mean that's the only way I can think to describe them as well.
So this has been your bi-weekly-ish dose of Jesuitical propaganda, and remember, don't question
We'll
the
be getting
Pope.
the paycheck soon.
Yeah,
Have a
yeah, by because John Soros is of course secretary of the Order of Jesus, and so he's in charge of payroll. So I'll talk to him. But yeah,
Before any more class alpha leaks happen, I've been one of your hosts, McCosk.
I've been I am.
this has been Main Bronze.